Hey, welcome to Mad Dog's After Show with Mad Dog and Cole, the Moto Man Farrell.
Yippee-ki-yay.
I decided to fly through the air and live in the sunlight and enjoy life as much as I could, and that's just what I'm doing.
Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure? Stay calm. Wait.
We are riding through beautiful Kelso, Washington tonight. Hey, shout out to our man Evil Knievel and his wise words. Live in the sun, live your life, take your chances, make it worth it.
It's an inspiring way to start the show. It's
It is.
probably pretty cliche, but it doesn't mean you have to jump motorcycles over Caesar's fountain to live your life, you know? As the great Kurt Caselli said, do something every day that scares you, even if that's calling your grandma.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I agree completely. And props, respect, and race in peace to a couple of legends, man, for sure. So let's get on with it. We are on episode 5. Thank you. And we are at, I know everybody has been waiting for part 2 of the Cole 9 Yards, and it is here. I'm telling you right now, the Cole 9 Yards episode 2 is completely raw, unrehearsed, and gonna be fun.
You know, if you made it through the first episode, I think this is the one that's going to reward you, because the first one was just 20 years of setup. And so now this is where things actually start happening.
Yeah. So where we capped it, besides the dog barking and being late and all that, we capped it. You were talking about how pretty much the SRA, your first SRA, was like the igniter, if you will, to the rocket.
Absolutely. It was the catalyst of everything that was to come. And
It's
just
such a great word, catalyst.
thank you. Yeah, it's not the thing under your car that people steal.
No, brilliant
Yeah.
use of the word too.
Oh, well, thank you. I try to not be
Anyway,
too shallow and too pedantic. But yeah, that race was
so
the perfect experience just because my close riding buddies were all there. We had such a fun time and had horrible technique. And like I said, I pulled all my tear offs. I mean, besides crashing, things couldn't have gone worse as far as racing goes. And it's one of the best memories that I'll ever have. So everybody was so excited after that round that it turned pretty serious pretty quick. My friends Kyle, Brandon, Tyler, and we started riding a lot more often after that. And what was so beautiful was that Tyler and I were more desert guys. Brandon and Kyle were more track guys. And so we could kind of trade off where we were going. And the nice thing was that everybody liked everything. So we never had these protests or never had groups split up to go ride here one weekend, whatever. It was like, hey, desert feels good this weekend. Hey, Kauai feels right this weekend. So it was awesome.
Yeah.
So we got a good taste of everything. But yeah, we started racing a little bit more often, especially sticking with the SRA Grand Prix. And we started doing these more one-off races like Christmas Grand Prix and things like this. And Glen Helen used to do their New Year's Day Grand Prix. So we just started picking up little stuff here and there.
Lake Elsinore.
Lake Elsinore. That was, we'll get to that, but we started racing a lot more frequently at this point. And the nice thing was that we had the support system where everybody was pretty inexperienced, but we were all very passionate about going and doing it. So to fast forward a little bit, at this point, I was working at a Ford dealership, and they had a 2006 Silverado sitting in the back lot that I had no idea what was doing there. And it was sitting there for 3 months. So I eventually asked my boss what the deal with this truck was. And he said he'd make me a killer deal on it. And so it's so crazy to look back because this is 2012 and it was a 2006 Silverado. And here we are in 2022 and I still don't have as new of a vehicle as a 2006. But back then, working at the Ford dealership, thinking I had this 6-year-old truck, you know, had the little 4.8, but it was the V8 and extended cab and a nice 6-foot bed and stuff. So it was like, okay, this is not bumming rides off people anymore and trying to throw my gear into my Baja Bug and meet people at the track. It was like, okay, now I'm actually a little bit more self-sufficient and I can kind of call the shots as far as where I want to go ride and when I want to go race. And I don't recommend it, but I could go by myself when I really felt the need to as well. So that truck became really important to my independence.
That was like your gateway drug.
That was my gateway drug, was that 2006 Silverado, which hopefully I can buy back someday. But that was really a really good experience. I have been running the CR250 for quite a while. In all reality, it was probably 2 good seasons of racing, doing these one-off Grand Prix and things like this. But I had actually seized the motor in Johnson Valley. I was racing after an XP, must have been an XP 900 at the time, and I was probably a half mile back. And so I was doing everything I could to catch it. So I eventually jumped on what they call Bessemer Mine Road, which is a major graded road out there in Lucerne. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make up some time here. Total guardian angel moment, because I had this bike 5th gear wide open as fast as it would go, and I was just hitting the kill switch now and then just to dump a little raw fuel and try to keep the head cool. But other than that, I was fully tucked chasing after this Razor. Well, the guardian angel part of this is the motor was screaming and it gave me one little hiccup. That's all it took. And it scared me enough to where I sat up and I pulled the clutch in and the motor just seized. And we're not talking like the head seized. It was like the crank became a pretzel. And if that would have happened a half a second before, where I was fully tucked, arguably one hand off as fast as this bike would go, I'd have been going 80 miles an hour down the Swiss cheese gravel road. And I probably wouldn't have ridden after that. Who knows? But this bike was completely detonated from the bottom up. I mean, it needed a full case split. And I mean, realistically, it probably needed new cases and everything and a wrench rabbit kit to put all together. And money is quite scarce at this point. Just, you know, it's never abundant, but at this point it was like, wow, I don't even have probably the $300 to buy this crank kit and everything to put this thing back together. So the thing sat in my garage for quite a while, and I got lucky because I had a roommate who had the opposite problem, where he had a brand new Cheater CR250F that had a 280 motor in it, but he didn't want to ride anymore. So it was like, hey, well, why don't you ride this thing? I'll come to the races and pit for you, and we'll do all this stuff. But yeah, you can ride my bike. It was like, looking back, I mean, that was probably a horrible idea, just because using other people's equipment can always get a little funky without a contract. But I was so lucky to have Pete at that time, who had this bike that was pristine and it had nice precision concepts, everything. I mean, Bob over there did the suspension, and we were pretty close in weight and height. So, I mean, this thing was just, I'm not a big 4-stroke 250F guy, but compared to having nothing at all to ride, that's a pretty sweet ride to have.
Hell yeah. So
that year we decided to chase SRA and tried to do all 12 rounds and chase after points. So I did 250 novice at that point. And the only funky thing about,
to interrupt you for 1 second, we have some listeners who don't know what an SRA is. So just real quick.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yep. So SRA is our Grand Prix championship that we have mostly here in Southern California. It used to mostly be a traveling series between Carlsbad, Adelanto, and Glen Helen. It was our Grand Prix series that was quite illustrious at the time, and they're still going strong, but they're more focused on just Glen Helen now. And this racing is really interesting because you use basically every piece of the property that the racetrack of the day has, where you'll go between the multiple different motocross tracks. You'll use the pro tracks, you'll use all the trails in the back, you'll use, even at Glen Helen, you go on their short course truck track, which is nice and slippery first thing in the morning. Any sort of washes they have. I mean, it's very beginner friendly, but it also challenge you, and it's a great bang for your buck series as well.
For sure, because you end up basically, you get some of that desert, you get some of the quick track, you get some of the tech track, yeah, a little of everything, really.
Absolutely, and I think I barely touched on this in the first part of this, but when they were racing Carlsbad, you actually got to race the length of the drag strip. So they would drop you behind the Christmas tree, you would go down the quarter mile, but oh no, you're not done. You keep going all the way to the escape route. So you have about a half a mile of asphalt as well that you had to remember had a right turn at the end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just a really cool series. It's great bang for your buck, just like our AMA Big Six series is. But you get a nice blend of everything. So my dad was very involved with SRA when I was growing up. And so that became my comfort zone. That became the most intriguing series to me was SRA, especially you figure out the silly things like where sign up is and what time practice is and who your competitors are. And then it's like, okay, this is something that's easy to bring my friends to because at least I know how the system works as well.
Right.
So yeah, we attempted to chase the SRA championship, which that year, in full honesty, was only at Glen Helen. They didn't travel anywhere else. They tried to keep it interesting, but at the same time, it's 11 rounds, 12 rounds of the same place, which good and bad. It's 45 minutes from the house, but also it wouldn't hate a little bit of variety as well.
Yes.
So everything went great that year. I mean, we even had not only duct tape numbers, but one round we had Sharpie numbers, 292. I mean, we're talking just low budget racing out there.
Right.
I remember vividly the May round, and I don't know why, but I decided to wear a Hawaiian shirt because I think I'd been doing okay in the points, and I was feeling pretty confident in novice class. And I'm like, hey, let's have a little fun with it. Oh, I know why. The race was on my birthday, so I wore a Hawaiian shirt.
Or your birthday suit.
Or my birthday suit. So, of course, I ended up tipping it down, which I would never do otherwise if I wasn't wearing a Hawaiian shirt. So, just for you listening at home, remember to stay humble. You're never too cool to wear the appropriate gear, is the moral of that story. But I actually, at the end of the year, got 4th place, which is so much worse than getting 5th place because it's not 3rd, you're top 5, but you're just like, what do you do with 4th place? And I'll never forget there was this movie Semi-Pro where Will Ferrell is so happy his basketball team got 4th place, and so that became our chant for that whole winter was 4th place, 4th place.
We used to call it Forgotten Fourth.
Forgotten 4th, yeah.
Yeah, because the next week everybody remembered who was on the podium, and top 5 you only remember number 5 because if you were in 6, that's the guy you had to beat, right? So but 4th was just kind of like top 5 purgatory.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna start saying that now. I can't believe we've known each other this long and this is the first time we're talking about Forgotten 4th.
I've been there.
So something very interesting right after that season happened where my friend Tyler got hurt in a sport bike accident. And so he got all the pins and needles and long recovery. His leg basically didn't work anymore at that point. The military doctors had to re-break it. It was a whole travesty. Well, he wasn't going to ride for a long time. So he had this semi brand new RMZ 450 sitting there, and I had a Baja Bug sitting there. And it was like, well, I don't want to drive my Baja Bug anymore, and you can't ride your RMZ anymore. So why don't we do a swap of titles here. So that's how I ended up with my 2009 RMZ 450 at that point.
Nice.
So now we're on 3 different bikes basically within 4 years. And 2 of them were actually mine. But so we put the Suzuki together. I specifically remember taking all of my Sandsport Super Show bonus money, got that on Monday in an envelope, and then Tuesday it was gone because it all went to Mission Motorsports for everything I was going to need. And it was so funny at that point because my friend Kyle had a Suzuki, Brandon had a Suzuki. Well, now I had a Suzuki. And so we started racing motocross. So we started racing what they called at the time the Trans World Motocross Series, which was Trans World Motocross Magazine's motocross series.
Right.
So we dabbled in that a little bit, and that was really interesting because that was, to me, so different from the Grand Prix stuff. Motocross, like I'd said in the first episode, was something that was a little foreign to me as far as being a competitor went, because you're going from survival of 45 minutes to an hour to where now you're going as fast as you can to the first turn, trying to beat each other for 5 laps, rinse, repeat. So we had dabbled in this a little bit, raced tracks like Milestone, which unfortunately that one's gone now, Glen Helen, LACR, which is in Palmdale, California.
Right.
But it was cool to kind of do a traveling series now. And at this point, Tyler had recovered and he decided, well, now I don't want to be left out. So I'm going to buy a brand new RMZ 450. So we were like the yellow crew rolling to the track. We had 2 trucks and 4 Suzukis rolling up to Trans World, chasing these series. And in that series, in full honesty, we raced beginner class because beginner class in Trans World was like intermediate in SRA class. I mean, it was the intensity was wild.
Yes.
And I vividly remember a kid was racing 250F class. He was racing open class on a 250F in beginner, and he waxed us so much that he jumped on the 125 for the second moto and then still waxed the field.
Wow.
So this was like Loretta Lynn's T-ball on steroids. This is where everybody who was trying to be something was coming and racing.
Right.
And that was not us. We were the guys that had jobs on Monday, and we partied pretty hard on the weekends, and we hardly worked out. Working out was playing softball during the week or whatever, and we're working 50 hours a week. So we had a great time, but we also didn't necessarily fit in. So it was a big learning curve doing motocross. And funny thing about being 1, frugal, and 2, being a Grand Prix guy is I was like, well, I'm not going to drive to these tracks, load up my gear, spend all this money and do 10 laps. So at the height of it, when I seriously started chasing these championships, I would race 3 classes a day. I would do 6 motos a day.
Wow.
And looking back, I'm like, I don't really know how I did that or why I would want to do that. But I would race 450 beginner. They had something like I know what it was, 450 beginner. And then I had plus 25 class and then 450 open. So 6 motos a day, 6 gate drops. I mean, it was so much scarier than racing Grand Prix, because with Grand Prix, you have 1 first turn and then 45 minutes to figure it out, where now it's trying to battle each other and then re-rack them 6 times a day. So 1 year, and it was 2015 at this point, I had actually wrapped up 2 championships and got 2nd place in the 3rd championship. So although I wasn't a motocross guy, it was my consistency or my tenaciousness or whatever. I was certainly never the fastest guy, but I think because I was somebody who didn't have to rely on my parents to go to the races at this point, that I could hit, and I was a single guy, I could go do all this stuff. I think that was the difference. And so I have this super embarrassing photo that Tyler actually took of me when I was leaving Palmdale one day, because I had my first place trophy from the day, I had a first place trophy from the championship, and then another one under my armpit, and then I had a Coors Light in my right hand. So I had 3 trophies and a beer, and I was, as a joke, said, "Hey, take my photo. Probably gonna send it to my dad." Well, the guy who runs all the Trans World Media runs over and he goes, "Wait, wait, wait! Let me take that photo as well." And so next thing you know, it was up on the website the next day. And I look like a total dork as this chubby dude winning all these 450 beginner and novice classes and plus 25. It's like, hey, look at me in the magazine drinking a beer. Like, if this guy can do it, you can do it too. So everybody's reposting and tagging me, and half the people are like, "This is so awesome." Well, those people didn't know what it was. These are people that just think it's like I'm somebody in the sport. And then everybody who actually knows how well I ride is like, "You dingus, look at you out there with your stupid Suzuki hat and shirt and beer in hand." But
To the victor go the
to
spoils.
the victor go the spoils. So motocross was a really good time. It was a great experience in the fact that I've never had to face so many fears so quickly and adapt to things. There was one day where Milestone had completely been blown out with wind, and it was like, okay, whoever gets the start is going to try to hit the big back table jump first, and if that guy survives, then we'll all know that we can make it. And I remember being in a pack of 3 guys, and we all hit it at the same time and made it, and got blown over probably 4 or 5 feet in the air. But since you hit it the first lap, well, now you'll only have the option to hit it every lap to be competitive. Another time it was racing in the mud, and it was the promoter even said, "Hey, this is too gnarly and it's going to wreck the track. What do you guys want to do?" And it's like, "Well, no, we already paid our money, and I had a great first moto, so damn it, we're going to race." And I vividly remember that because I lost it in the last moto. I stalled and couldn't get it restarted, so I lost with a 1-2 compared to a 2-1.
Oh man.
So moto was just so cool to get so much thrown at me and get to go race all these different tracks, and to do it independently was just so fun.
Yeah.
And so I was
competitive.
Competitively. Now I'm probably going to make so many people mad, but I'm not saying this, I'm just repeating this. People like to say that West Coast novices are like East Coast intermediates. So all I'm saying is, if I get a time machine and I can come race you, I'll stand by that. The West Coast is the place to be, and you can laugh at me for racing beginner class or novice all you want, but I know how difficult that was to mix it up with those guys.
Oh yeah, I see it in my travels with the Kicker AMA Pro Arena Cross series. We have some more eastern guys, even though the series tends to be more throughout the Midwest. We have guys from the West Coast and guys from the East Coast, and it's really funny because it's funny you say that, because when we get to places like like Reno, you have these guys that come out of Southern California or Central California, and they're up there with the guys that are running on the podium in the 250 East class in Supercross, and they're banging bars with them. The only difference is, usually you can tell in the pits the West Coast guys, because there's generally more of a smell of marijuana.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that, but no, there's some really, really good West Coast guys that just hop into the Kicker AMA Pro series once in a while. They'll show up in Denver, and all of a sudden there's a race.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a proud West Coast guy, and I will vehemently defend that to the death. And I think a lot of it is being in the epicenter of motocross. And also we have weather where you can ride and race year round,
Yeah.
where the guys on the East Coast aren't so lucky. So I would never challenge anybody on a sled back east or up north, but I'm confident.
Yeah, I wouldn't take anything away from some of the Kicker AMA Pro arena cross riders out of the East, guys like Peters, Cullen Park, Darian Sinai raced a couple years ago. Man, there's just a Lessie,
Oh yeah.
he's an East Coast guy. And those guys, Jace Owen, those guys are fast.
Oh yeah. Once you get to that level, you're totally different ball game at that when you're that level of talent.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think if the West Coast pros, when they come in, they're the only ones that come in and put a challenge up to the guys who are smacking everybody down every week. So I would concur that there's definitely something, there's some unfair advantage there. It's like the guys that can afford to rent the tracks to test at compared to the guys who ride on practice nights, or test nights every Thursday or whatever. Big difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel very lucky to have grown up here,
Yeah.
And I get this podcast for me is all about honesty, no matter how uncool it may sound. But it's like there's times where you look at these trophies and whatever, these pictures, and it's like novice, beginner, amateur, and it's like, dude, I was certainly not even close to the fastest guy out here on the West Coast, and I certainly one of the most fearful people when it comes to big jumps and stuff. But I remember putting in some battles, and I can safely say that there's a lot of talent out here, and I just wish I had had more of it.
Well, I can tell you for a fact that you have way more talent than I do, because I made a push at moto when I was young, and realized pretty quickly, as a test rider and a product tester, I was good because I could tear shit up.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
But on the track, I didn't like to jump. I still don't like to jump.
Yeah.
Even in a side by side, it's not my favorite thing. Have I hucked one? Yeah, several times. Have I always had a case of the guts? Absolutely, because it's like I'm gonna wad this up so bad and look like such an idiot. But no, props to you, because the track stuff, even the GP stuff, the SRA stuff, man. I rode a little bit on my in the utility class, open utility, and with some success. But to do it on a bike is a whole nother level of mental, really.
Yeah.
And you are that level of mental.
I'm never scared to go down big rocky rain washes, hill climbs. I'm pretty confident in. I'm not afraid to go in ravines and all sorts of stuff. It's just when you tell me it's 90 feet to the backside and you can't see the landing, that's not my jam. And that's something that was always going to put a ceiling on the motocross stuff and even some of the Grand Prix stuff. But yeah, the motocross stuff kind of had the writing on the wall for me, just because I wasn't willing to take that next step working Monday to Friday. I didn't have health insurance, and to be honest, like that's a real excuse, but at the same time I just didn't want to do it. When you have to send the uphill triple at LACR to be competitive, I couldn't couldn't justify spending my $100 at sign up to roll the triple. It didn't make a lot of sense for me. That's where I ended up kind of being in a funky time where, okay, so I have the Suzuki. I did everything I wanted to do on the motocross side of things. I raced all the tracks that I wanted to, got to experience it all, the highs and the lows. So I was in this weird time of what do I do next? Do I spend $300, which I doubt I even had at the time, to put a big tank on the Suzuki and an 18-inch rear wheel and go race some desert? Do I go back to Grand Prix racing with the Suzuki full time? Do I find something else completely to do? It's a very strange time. And I still, to this day, haven't really figured out how that happened, but I just remember feeling sort of lost as far as what to do for fun on the weekends. Yeah. And at the time, I was working at the tire shop. And the owner of the tire shop had 2 KX500s sitting in a container outside, a nice sealed container. And before I even really understood what a KX500 was, besides the weapon that Destry Abbott would ride across the desert, my boss at the time was always trying to sell me these KX500s. And it's like, hey, one's got a license plate, which will never happen again in California, and the other one's got cooler graphics on it, and it has about 2 hours on it. And they've both been sitting in that container since 1996, 1997. And I was like, okay, well, let's think about this, because the 4-strokes are so incredible to ride. They're so easy to ride. Let's see what this 500 thing is about. So I started asking around, and I'm sure I talked to you plenty of times about big bore Kawasaki's and, hey, what do you think? What's this all about? Well, we came to a great price agreement, which turns out I feel bad and I should go back and pay that guy Joe more money for this 500, but he made me a great deal on it. And it came with an absolute laundry list of parts, which is part of the story as well. It had 2 desert tanks, it had an 18-inch rear wheel, a kickstand, a headlight, a couple sets of bars, extra petcocks, an extra seat. Just the parts alone were probably worth what I paid for the bike itself. So I cleaned this thing up. I took up all the dorky headlight stuff he'd put on, the blinkers, and just all the weird Joe stuff, we'll call it, that was on this thing. And I cleaned it up, and I put the 19-inch rear wheel back on it because it's a little more sporty and kind of what it came with. And it was like, hey, this thing's pretty cool, This thing rides really well. I rode it for the first time at Paula, and I was able to hit all the jumps on it and everything, which, looking back, I probably should have changed the suspension oil, which had been in the bike since 1994 on a 1995 model. And actually, I swear it had the stock tires on it, and it was sure slippery in the corners. But a couple months, I put my bars that I liked on it. I put some fresh tires on it, cleaned the thing up really well. And I decided to go race the Adelanto Grand Prix because they had something called the Revolution class, which was 1985 bikes to 1995 bikes. And it's like, well, what bike would fit perfectly in this category to go race Adelanto, a 1995 KX500? So that was my first big race, we'll call it, because it was a AMA sanctioned, what they called Big Six at that time, Big Six Grand Prix.
Yep. So
this race was so exciting because I was starting on the streets of Adelanto just like my dad had done, and I'd seen all these guys like Ty Davis and Johnny Campbell and all these. Well, now I'm involved. Now this is super exciting. I remember my practice was at 7. I had to sign up at 6. I had to get my license by 5:30 in the morning, so I had to leave the house by 3:30 in the morning to go race Adelanto. And this would become a routine over the next 2 years, it turns out. But
yes.
I raced this Adelanto Grand Prix with zero expectation, raced once again in the novice class, and I looked at the results, and I had gotten second out of 10 guys. And I'd never raced an AMA Big Six before. And it was like, whoa, what? Like, you hand me a plastic trophy and say you got second at something I'd never done before? Like, what an easy way to get me hooked into something. That was just like, well, if I got second at this round, not really knowing what to expect, what's the next round going to be? Now that I'm I've kind of raced these guys one time and stuff. So no joke, from that point on, it turned into, well, let's go race them all. Because I had a family friend, Janet, and her boyfriend Ron was racing at the time, and this guy Ron had been doing Big Six for years and years and years before I'd even met him. So he knew the tracks. He was super fast masters class guy, so he was 50 plus and faster than I could ever go in my life. So I had a great support system because I had these people who were just as excited about going racing, and they'd done it before. So now I had jumped on a new set of coattails to go racing. And my second race at Honolulu Hills, I had actually won. So my second round of Big Six, I had won. And that was so unexpected, just so cool. And I still have the trophy. It's probably the size of my cell phone here, and it's a piece of wood that's got like Sharpie written on it. It's the ugliest thing you've ever seen. I think I've used it as a coaster many times, but that was my first Big Six win, was that trophy from Honolulu Hills. So I ended up winning that championship after chasing all. What's that?
I remember the text from that day.
Yep. You were talking me through it, and I'm actually really glad you just piped in right there, because I remembered something very strange about that day. We actually had 2 rounds to go, and I was in signups, and I saw the guy who I was battling the championship with the whole time. And I'll never forget this. And it was like, hey man, what are you doing? I don't see you signed up. And he had like all these 4-letter words and was like, I'm done with this class. I don't want no part of you guys. I'm over this. I'm not racing. And it's like, no man, you don't get it. Like, you only get 1 drop score, and I'm going to Havasu. So if you don't race today, like, you're going to hand this thing to me. Screw this class. I'm over it. So he didn't race me that day, which is almost a little unfulfilling, but at the same time, it's like, man, like, I gritted my teeth over the other 6 rounds. I guess I don't want to say earned it. That sounds entitled, but I had worked for it. So that was a really strange way to win it 1 round early and still go to Havasu. And so I was still excited to go to Havasu the next month, because I'm like, okay, cool. I have 0 expectations going into this thing. I could ride in last place with my middle finger off the bar and wave to the crowd, and I still get the championship. So I won the novice class championship for Revolution. So the next year came, and the guy that I was battling with was also bumped up to amateur, because if you win a championship, at least in the off-road program of AMA, you're done. You're out. So there's no defending your number 1 title.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, which is fine.
No.
So,
Sure.
So amateur championship, same thing, but I was quickly getting humbled, because there was a lot of guys that were kind of floundering between pro and amateur class in Revolution. And so depending on who signed up that day, changed whether I got 4th or 1st. It was like, you could almost like at signups, you could tell what the order of that day was going to be. And so I ended up getting 2nd in that championship the second year. So 2nd place in amateur class. Okay, cool. That was great. Well, now this guy Todd Rooney's moving up, so I think I can go win this amateur championship in 2019. Well, no, I get a letter from AMA that next month, and it says, we would like to congratulate all of our brand new AMA pros, give them a warm welcome, Cole Farrell, number N4. And it's like, no, can I protest this? I'm not a pro. I'm not ready for the expert class. Like, what are you doing? I still can't win an amateur race to save my life. I won 2 by technicality last year, but now I'm in the expert class. So at that point, I was once again a little lost and kind of out of money. And it was like, well, I'm not old enough to race plus 30 class yet, but I'm not willing to go eat roost for an hour in expert class yet. So let's kind of take a step back here. And so I'd found a YZ250 online that I'd bought. Amazing same thing, came with just a absolute ton of parts. And then it was like, well, let's go do these kind of one-off races like these Elsinore Grand Prix, keep doing these. If Catalina Grand Prix ever comes back, we'll be ready. It was kind of like, let's go do some oddball races, which was cool. It was a loose program that year of 2019 because I wasn't chasing any championship, so I could kind of go do what I wanted to do. I did a lot of night races. I ended up doing quite a few desert races on the KX500, which was just, turns out after racing Grand Prix for so long, that bike was just meant for the desert the whole time. And it was just,
Oh yeah,
slapping me in the face like, hey, this is where this thing belongs.
absolutely. I want to go back real quick though. You were talking about your amateur season before you got bumped to pro, and you said you tripped into a couple of wins or something like that. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Take every win. You have to be there. If the guy in front of you was in first and crashed, Derek Cope style, Daytona, the man himself, Earnhardt, everybody discredited Derek Cope. Oh, Earnhardt had that in the bag. Well, the checkered flag didn't fly until after Derek Cope crossed the line. He ran second for a long time to get first.
Yeah, it's
So, and I've been there. I've been in situations where, it's like, are you really going to take that win? Like nobody else finished. I'm like, yeah, I am, because nobody else finished.
yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. It makes me feel pretty good to hear that stuff. But real quickly, it's funny, all this stuff that you bounce off of me, and it actually reminds me of things I forgot. But my amateur year, I won 2 races. First one was round 3, which was Glen Helen, which I'd like to say that's my home turf. But guess what? This is Southern California, so it was everybody else's home turf. But Todd Rooney was not racing that day, and it was pouring rain for 3 days before. They couldn't even get in the main gate there. They had to bring us back in through the amphitheater, standing water everywhere, people's trucks getting stuck just in the pits, total mud fest. I'd gotten a really good start, and I rode my heart out, and I actually crashed on the ridges. I hit my head so hard, it broke my visor. I couldn't get the 500 started. I lost like a minute. Somehow got the thing back going, charge, almost put it down on the wet asphalt a couple times, ran out of tear-offs, ended up having to put my goggles on backwards like a European enduro guy. So I had no goggles for the last lap. And it was like, I come across the finish line. It's like, whatever, I survived. Well, same thing again. You go look at the result sheet, and it's like, well, why is my name at the top? I crashed and hit my head,
Yeah.
So I won my home court, and then the last race was in Havasu, which was the Vikings Grand Prix. And I thought that was so cool, being a Swedish Norwegian Viking descent, to win the Viking Grand Prix. So that was really special if I could win 1 or 2 of those races. And Havasu was my worst track too. So to win on my home track and my worst track was...
Dude, Havasu is brutal.
I will gladly never race there ever again. And I hope that track never goes away, because I want to watch other people go do it.
Yeah, for sure. You got to come out and stay with us sometime when there's like a Works or what's the other one that's racing out there now?
And so that's that Big 6, but they call it NCGP now.
Oh, okay.
It's a nationally recognized championship.
Oh, very
So
nice.
they changed the name. Yep.
Yeah.
Havasu's so cool, sitting on the water, sitting in those trees. I mean, there's no other racetrack like it.
If they time it right, you come out, we'll just take my boat over, drop anchor, and watch the racing.
Well, now I'm for sure coming, so can't take that invite back.
So, yeah, no, and I remember when you were running that year, there was one track, and I can't remember what it was. You actually called me because you were having a hell of a time with the transition, not onto the pavement, but off the pavement onto the sand.
Yeah.
I remember distinctively, it was a real sandy berm. And I remember talking to you and trying to give you some like road racing tips on how to get your entry hot into the sand but still make the corner and not blow the berm like the guy ahead of you.
Yeah. And not to gloss over, you were helping me a ton that year. I mean, you helped me get my suspension dialed at Race Tech, and I was certainly you were
Thought about that.
yeah, you were coaching me through a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
that's certainly not forgotten and always appreciated. But yeah, that was at 29 Palms, and anyone who's raced there has to laugh because it's about a mile long strip of asphalt that's perfectly flat until the last bit. Then you have a G out, a rise, and then a right turn. And so going from 101 miles an hour to make that right hander without mowing the bush down was very difficult for me in my small 1995 brakes. So yeah, that was also a learning experience. You miss that corner every other lap and you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to shut it off early each time. I'm going to shut it off early. But it's like, that's the only place where I can make up time because other guys are shaking out their arm pump and I can hit triple digits on this KX500 with a 42 3-year sprocket. So
yeah,
I gotta make up some time somewhere.
yeah.
And the pavement's where it was.
That's where I taught you the trick Rob Muzzy taught me about getting torque to the ground through dragging the rear brake going like in the sand when you were transitioning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can't say that I got that dialed, but I certainly took that into consideration. And if I was to be able to jump on that bike today, I would be doing that just like you taught me. So
well, it's the thought that counts, right?
the thought that counts. And I just hope Mr. Muzzy's proud of me if he remembers who I am. But
okay, so we're at that season. Now, where are we going? You're riding multiple different things on the YZ.
Yeah, it's very fun year 2019 because I was racing the 500 in the desert, racing the YZ at Grand Prix and motocross stuff, and then I would also race the YZ at night races, which we started doing at SRA, which was so fun, just a great atmosphere. But it was a not chasing championship year. It was a pick and choose exhibition year, we'll call it, to go do everything I've ever wanted to do. Well, I ended up, I can't say I blew up the 500, but the power valves ended up getting so gunked up that I had to pull the motor apart, send it out to the guys at the pro shop. They cleaned it all up for me, but it took about a month to get all the parts and get everything tumbled and cleaned. So at that time, I was just purely racing the YZ, which was fun to jump back and forth between a bike that was basically a bicycle, and then you got this warhammer of a KX500 that can lug you through corners. So it was kind of nice to jump back and forth between the two, depending on your mood. But we had decided that we didn't want to miss any motocross races at LACR because it's an old granite mine where all the rocks are taken out of it. And it's this really unique beach sand that holds water really well. And it's such a fun course. It's one of the farthest motocross tracks for us that we realistically would do, but it was one that we would miss 10 milestones to go race LACR. Right. It's just that track. It's a cool name. It's a cool place, cool atmosphere. So October 27th, 2019, Tyler and I decide to go race this Trans World race out there. And at this point, they'd already changed names. So now it's called the Swap Moto Series. So we want to go to the Swap Moto race. And looking back, it is so comical just because everything was just cursed going into this day. It was like alarms didn't go off, couldn't get parts in time, so had to use old sprockets and just weird stuff. Tyler and I were going down the 138 and we hit a bird with the windshield at 5:30 in the morning. And it was just like weird bad omens all day. But whatever. I mean, the last thing you want to do is fixate on that stuff when you're racing, right? You're like, okay, all this stuff happened. Got to put this away because we're going to go out and have fun. and we're going to go back tonight and laugh about it and go to work on Monday. So I was racing the SWAT moto race, and we were still in practice, and there's this jump that I had done a million times. I mean, I could do a can off it. I could do 1-footers. I could do whatever. I was comfortable as can be on this jump. Well, for whatever reason, the glare coming off of the track, the newly watered track, it was throwing me off, and I really couldn't gauge the distance really well this morning. And it was one of those things where I rolled it the first 3 or 4 laps in practice, and it's like, okay, well, it's business time now. You got to start hitting everything because practice is going to be over in 10 minutes, and then it's time for one of 6 motos. So I came out of the corner, and I just remember not being able to see like I normally could. It was like, I can't really gauge this thing. And so I'm in the air, and everything becomes clear, and I'm like, uh-oh, I'm about 10 or 12 feet short of where I need to be.
Ooh.
And everything happened so fast. I hit the rear wheel, and I bounced so hard off the back of this landing that I remember in my head thinking to myself, well, this is going to be a big one. And I'll never forget that moment of, it's probably a quarter second there, but it feels like an eternity. So however that bounce works out, I end up completely off the bike, and I land feet first. My heels are the first thing to hit the sand, and I feel my helmet hit my boots. And I am not a flexible guy by any means, but at that moment, I had just become the human stapler and just whap, whap, folded myself. So I come to, and I'm rolling around, and it's like, I can hear myself breathing really hard, and I knocked the wind out of myself. And I remember guys thinking I'm going to get landed on because I'm on the backside of this blind jump. Well, luckily, everybody had stopped around me. And I remember somebody saying, stop moving, stop moving. And it's like, how do you listen to directions at that point, right? Especially, it's not an EMT. It's just some guy sitting on a Honda like, hey, like, basically, get off the track. We need to keep practice going, you know?
Sure.
So I can't get up. I'm like, like, I just out of breath. So these EMTs come over, and they're probably, I don't know, 16 years old, if that. And they say, hey, you know, can you breathe? Yeah, I can breathe. Can you stand up? And I'm like, yeah, I think if you help me up, I can stand up. And then I just think I just need to like stretch out or something. So these girls help me up, and they throw me in the Rhino, and I'm sitting sideways, and I can feel every little bump going back down to the truck. Well, at that point, I had seen my friend Tyler, and he's like, dude, what happened? And I'm still trying to breathe. I'm like, I don't know. I crashed, man. Like something, I still don't even know. All I know is I crashed and I can't breathe, and I'm trying to talk to you, not be a jerk, but like, I don't even know what's going on. Where's your bike? I don't know. Leave it. I could care less at this point. Like something funky's going on. So we get back to the truck, and the doctors would be so mad to hear me say this, but I remember like sitting in different chairs, and I like leaned across the bed of the truck, and then I sat in the back seat, and then I even remember trying to like stretch my back over the cooler, just anything. I'm like, man, I can't get a full breath, and like I can't get comfortable. Like this isn't working, you know? And so at this point, I told Tyler, I said, you do your motos. I'm not going to race. I come to the reality that I probably have 1 or 2 broken ribs, and I can't race that day. I'm like, dude, I'm fine. You just go do you. So he goes out and does his second practice, and he comes in, and I remember looking for my insurance card thinking like, okay, well, I don't want to freak anybody out, but like, I definitely have to go to the hospital at this point because it's been a while and I still can't breathe and something's wrong.
Yeah.
I told Tyler, and he went in a full Marine hero mode, and he's like, nope, you stay there. I'll load the truck. You know, you do you, but I'm going to get you to the hospital. I mean, he wasted no time getting all our stuff. And so I didn't know how to tell him. I'm like, hey man, like I really need to go to the hospital, but I'm not going to go to the hospital in Palmdale. So like, if you can drive me home, I know my insurance is covered at Saddleback Hospital. Let's go there. Okay, cool. So that was a miserable 2-hour ride back in his truck. And I think I got broken ribs. And I remember telling him, I go, I don't know what's wrong But once all this hubbub is over, I'm going to get 2 butterfly wings tattooed on my back and it says, "Can't hold me down." And so he starts busting up laughing. So now I'm laughing. I mean, it's just anything at this point, just because like stuff is so serious that it's like, we can't handle it being that serious, right? It's
Right.
like, it's not how we are.
I totally understand that.
And so then he goes, "Well, let me call my now wife, Devin." He goes, "Let me call Devin and tell her you're going to the hospital." And I said, "Dude, if you call her, she's going to think I'm dead. I'll call her. You just need to dial the number for me because I can't really see straight." So I call her. I say, "Hey, going to Saddleback Hospital. I think I have some broken ribs. I've broken ribs before. We'll be in and out, whatever, a couple hours. But I'm just letting you know I'm on my way to the hospital." So Tyler gets me in a wheelchair at Saddleback Hospital. And now it's like starting to set in. Like, finally, after all these hours, I'm finally going into shock. And the lady's like, "What's wrong with you? Like, why are you here?" I'm like, "I don't know. My back hurts. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I need you to tell me what's wrong." I remember just pale in the face, in my full gear, in the hospital that I was born at. And to bring it all back around from episode 1, I was wearing shift white camo pants and my white cue ball helmet. I mean, I couldn't have looked any more like the first day I was riding. I mean, it was like, it started with camo pants and it turns out it would end with camo pants. But so they finally get me in the room, and the guy's name was Dr. Marvel. And I thought he was joking with me. "Oh, I'm Dr. Marvel." Whatever, I'm Captain Wow. Who cares? But they threw him and they said, "Hey, we got to do some CT scans. You know, you think you got some broken ribs. Let's see what's going on." Okay. So I'm sitting there with my now wife, and we're sitting in the room, and I, honest to God, was telling her, "Hey, there's a BJ's restaurant in this parking lot. So once they give me my turtle shell or whatever, and my pain pills, let's go get lunch at BJ's restaurant. It's right across the parking lot right here. I'm starving." So we hear a phone call down the hall, and the guy goes, "Hey, my name is Dr. Marvel. I have a 28-year-old male here. He's got a burst T12, fractures in T1, T2, and T3, and I don't know what to do." And it was like, uh-oh, I'm a 28-year-old male healer. I feel like my back's broken. Maybe this is about me.
Oh boy.
So they can't handle me at the hospital. They load me up in an ambulance, and they send me to Mission Hospital down the street. And the worst part about that was the guy who was helping me in the ambulance was also from Palmdale, and he also rode motorcycles. So all he wanted to do the whole ride to the other hospital was talk about riding. "Oh yeah, man, I used to ride to high school, and one day I didn't make it because I hit a rut and I slammed and I blacked out for 6 hours and I thought I was dead in the desert. Anyway, you'll be fine. Let's get you to the hospital." It's like, hey man, I love motorcycles more than anybody, but don't talk to me right now.
Right.
So that's when they got me to Mission Hospital, and they said, "We have to get you into surgery first thing tomorrow." The doctor comes in and he says, "Hi, my name's Dr. Kim." Shout out to Dr. Kim. Dude saved my life. And he goes, "Okay, here's the deal. Basically, we're going to start surgery early tomorrow morning. I'm going to put 2 rods, 10 screws, and a spinal cage in your back. And yeah, that'll be it. No more motorcycles for you. I'll see you in the morning." And so they gave me a couple more CT scans, a couple MRAs that night. They don't allow you to have any painkillers, no pillow, no nothing the night before surgery. They finally gave me morphine about 3 a.m., which was, I mean, that was the lifesaver just for that night to get me through. But yeah, so the next morning they put in 2 rods, 10 screws, and a spinal cage into my back. Come out of surgery, and the first person I see is my pastor. And it's like, well, this isn't good. Yeah. So, but jokes aside, he was awesome to have there. He read me some scripture and actually helped feed me that first meal, that first nasty hospital chicken. And you were there either that night or the next morning. I remember, and you'll be able to tell this story better than I, but I remember that you were going from one of your many trips to another trip, and you canceled your second leg of the journey to hang out in the hospital with me. And that was, I mean, I'll never be able to thank you enough for doing that. What a weird room to have my pastor that married my parents and my girlfriend at the time, and and you and my grandma got to meet, and my other past. I mean, it's just like my dad came off a straight from a flight from Spain, was racing supercars over there with the team, came straight out of LAX from Spain and went to the hospital. I mean, it was like whirlwind. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I remember so I was doing Camp Razor that year, and you told me what happened by text, which, by the way, you probably shouldn't text me stuff like that. It's like a phone call would be nice. You don't have to Zoom meeting it, but
To be fair, I don't remember any of it. So
yeah, no. And so then, yeah, I was scheduled to actually fly back home and then fly to another job. And I canceled that flight. Um, uh, yeah, I canceled that flight, and I was like, "No, I'm not coming home right now. I need to be there." I think I was only there a couple days, but I just want to make sure that you were going to live, you know, because I wanted to be able to continue to corrupt you further on in life. So,
which is still going. So thank you.
yeah, but I do remember I was in the room, and I think I met your grandma, and we were talking and stuff. And then and you had come to, and you went back out, and then probably an hour later you came back to, and you were like, "Bro, I'm so happy to see you. I just had a dream about you, that you were here talking to my grandma." And I was like, "No, dude, it wasn't a dream. Drug induced coma, but not a dream." Yeah, no.
That's so weird to hear stories about yourself that you don't remember.
Yeah. I I think I brought you a cheeseburger, so I might have a picture of it actually.
Yeah,
Pretty
I
sure.
I'm so grateful that you did that, and that actually makes all the sense in the world because that would have been Halloween weekend. So that's
Yep.
why you would have been in Southern California.
It definitely would there was no other option, bro. I mean, there was no option. There was no, "Oh well, I'm gonna go home," and I mean, no, that wasn't even the thought. So um, you know, the big thing is you've recovered. You're doing very well. Um, you're married.
I'm married. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, what a flattering photo. I can't wait to. Hey, that is a cheeseburger. All right.
Ah, and
That
yeah.
must be cold cock whiskey. Yep, it is.
It's
I'm sure the doctors
shout
probably
out to
ripped
me.
that out of my hands. I probably didn't even get to enjoy that with my cheeseburger.
I think yeah, I'm not saying, just in case your wife actually listens to this, which I hope she doesn't, but if she does, I'm not saying I brought that to you. I do
Exactly.
not know where that came from.
But what are the odds of all the whiskey brands that show up? It's cold cock whiskey.
Yeah, right. So yeah. So okay, well, that happened. You've been through a lot of PT. You're
Yep.
doing good.
Yep. So,
Still
uh,
passion.
yep. And so I've only said this out loud a couple times, but I've worked really hard to be okay with the fact that I most likely will not ride again. Just because even it's not something where everybody else is telling me you can't, and I'm saying no, I will overcome. It's even when I sit on a bicycle or put my shoes on every day, it's like, yeah, I don't know if I could necessarily handle any sort of even low speed slam. So I've worked really hard within myself to be okay with saying, okay, I had so many crazy memories in such a short amount of time that I just have to be so grateful that these happened and that chapter of life, the book slammed closed violently, and now I'm on to the next thing. I joke with a few people, but I'm like, maybe when I'm in my 70s, they'll have some type of better technology and they can 3D print me a spine and I'll ride probably a hydrogen motorcycle or whatever it is at that time.
Yeah.
And I'll go for the plus 70 Grand Prix championship. But yeah, now it's not kind of back in that weird time like I was in 2019 where I hate to use the word lost, but I do feel
Right.
a little lost. So that's where the Premix podcast photography thing came from. Trying to get more involved with the truck side of things. I'm planning on doing some pretty cool athletic things here next year that I'm not ready to say publicly yet because some things need to fall into place. But so yeah, I'm kind of in this odd time right now. But the fact that at the end of the day, it's like I can bitch and moan all I want, but the fact that I'm walking in here to talk about it today and just be like, yeah, I got my free pass basically. Like I got my one big warning shot, and it's like cool,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think like XRs, small XRs are still in order and worth the prescription to try. Um,
Absolutely. My dad still has possessions of them, so
yeah, but getting back and hucking doubles, yeah, man, I don't, you know, it's like it's like Winter X 2 years ago when Haslam nose slammed. I told him, "You're good, dude. I mean, God spared you. The X Games is not like that's not your thing. Winter X on a snow bike doesn't need to happen again.
yeah. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
You never got the gold, but you walked away from one you probably shouldn't have. So, and I'm who am I to preach, right? I mean, uh, I shouldn't be saying anything, but
Well, I can't wait to get into your story, and I've heard just tip of the iceberg on some of your slams, and so yeah, I'm excited to get through this episode so we can get to your stuff. That's what I'm interested to hear.
oh, we'll get to my stuff. I'm not about this. This isn't about me. This is about our travels and our experiences and the people we meet and their stories. Um, my stories just kind of trickle out here and there. Like drool when you've had too much to drink, kind of thing. So
But this is why we're recording them now.
right, right. Well, that's the thing is, and honestly, I'm really grateful that we're able to get these things and hopefully some of my stories down because there's like I've had over 10 major concussions. So who knows how long the old bean's going to be gray. um and that's something that as motorsports guys, I mean, we think about it but we don't worry about it really, you know. Um, but stuff happens and we have to look at that kind of stuff and make decisions and make smart decisions. Um, and as much as as much as I want to see you like just absolutely huck a triple on the KX 500. I just soon you didn't, you know. A little recreational riding in the desert in a few years, yeah, maybe, you know. First gear stuff, training wheels,
Sidecar, side hack.
Yeah, well, sidecars, there's still that opportunity. I'm still working on that. So
Yeah, I'm not ready to close that book. That's a
uh,
side magazine. So
yeah, I'm not either, and we'll talk about that at some point. We'll get into an episode where we'll talk about that, and maybe we can get uh, Joe Holler on here because he runs that Honda 500 side hack, and he has offered me anytime I want to be his monkey I can be. Um, I've seen him ride, and it frightens me a little bit. I I would much rather do it in the desert than on a moto track.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, Mint 400 2023.
there we go. There we go.
Pencil it in so you can always
I'm,
erase it.
I'm actually thinking the Mexican 1000 2023.
That race looks so cool. I want to do an episode just about that race, by the way.
Well, yeah, for sure. Make a note of it. You have your notepad?
Yep.
Yeah, make a note of it. We're spitballing ideas here, and I feel like we've kind of, we're pushing on time, I think.
As always, as is tradition.
Yeah, man. I know we really wanted to keep this short, but we've had so many good stories, right?
Yeah. I mean, luckily, sorry if the episode went long, but there's my whole life in 2 hours. So
Well,
nice to know you can wrap it up.
and it's I'm so grateful. You skipped a lot of things that I'll probably cover as we get deeper into podcasts and general banter. um there's still a lot about this guy that you folks don't know. um and I'm glad that God said not today, that day in October. Um, and I'm super stoked that we're doing something together again.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think something like this would happen if the crash didn't happen. So I'm so grateful that opportunities like this arise.
Yep,
Absolutely.
and we'll just maximize it, and won't be long. We'll have you once we get the YouTube up. We'll get some like video of him doing headstands and handstands. Um, green screen. No, seriously. Um, I think we should probably wrap it up for tonight. We're at hour and 12 minutes or so.
Yep. So I think this is a good time to thank our partners. What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Want to especially thank Kicker Performance Audio. Always hooking us up, always living loud. Got my handy dandy Cush. Cole's working on his pair of EB headbuds, earbuds. I just said headbud because your hair looks like it's like a dandelion bud under your hat.
Like Sideshow Bob from The Simpsons.
Yeah, you definitely got to do the flat top with the mullet.
Yeah, out of respect.
Yeah, for sure. I think you should. I think it'd look great.
I'll see you
It'd
at
be
Sancho.
sexy. Darn sexy. Uh, so yeah, Kicker Performance Audio, man. All your 12-volt audio needs. Kicker.com, car, marine, side by side, motorcycle, even personal audio like headphones, earbuds, Bluetooth speakers. Check them out. They're a great company with a great story. And they are truly an American company that's American owned. Um, and then, of course, Bomber Floating Eyewear, man. I I wore I was driving into the clouds today because I'm in Pacific Northwest. Um, and I was coming from the coast up here, which is pretty much along the coast, sort of. So I drove in clouds all day, and I actually wore my prescription boogie bombs today for a large portion of the day, just so I didn't get eye strain. Because when you're driving into that fog or the clouds and it's bright, because there's patches of blue sky, so it's really quite bright. Man, it just tuckers my eyes flat out. So, I have my prescription bomber eyewear, and that's another option for you. Bombereyewear.com. Um, Many options there. Everything from clear safety lenses, amber safety lenses to polarized glasses, polarized safety lenses, mirrored glasses, everything from great big giant Charlie Brown heads down to little pinheads like me. So they got you covered. BomberEyewear.com. Of course, always grateful for one of my best friends and my co-host and producer. I know that getting through that very last segment is very difficult, and props and respect. I was almost in tears. I'm thankful you weren't, because we're not babies here.
We're men, damn it.
We are men, damn it. And with that, I think I'm gonna get in a good hearty weekend. Check it out, AmericanFlatTrack.com, or download the AFT app. If you download the AFT app, they actually have live scoring and timing
That's badass.
during the races, which is super sick. Often I can't be close to the track, and so I'll use my app at the event because I can't see the track to follow who's doing what. And this is going to be rad. It's the return to Castle Rock TT.
Yes, sir.
I think it's going to be gnarly, and actually Castle Rock is putting on. I wish you were up here, because Castle Rock is putting on AMA sanctioned short track on Friday, and then am following it up, big show Saturday with American Flat Track, and then they're running AMA TT on Sunday.
So that's a weekend of variety. That's super cool.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to be here for all 3 days and represent Team Kicker, and I've got the bones of I drove in today and kind of got things staged. Tomorrow will be set up, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're just gonna party. So
Well, that sounds rad, dude, and I can't wait to talk to you after the weekend, and hopefully we'll be talking about how JD Beach won another TT race.
yeah, man, I've still got to catch up with him in the pits. I tried to catch up with him a couple of times, but he's always so busy, and then the pro pits, where the pro pits were in Lexington, they were actually not that far away, but dude, I was so busy in Lexington that I didn't hardly like one of the Mission Hospitality, the girl that runs Mission Hospitality, actually had brought me a plate of food.
That's rad. That's
Because
hospitality.
Yeah,
Living
there
up to
was
the name.
no way I was gonna get to eat. So shout out, Kelly. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. Anyway, we need to wrap this up. I'm getting pretty well known for long goodbyes. So let's wrap her up. Thanks again, Kicker Performance Audio, Bomber Floating Eyewear. Remember to check out Premix Podcast at the Premix Podcast. And please give us a like and a follow here. And thanks and good night from very damp, although not raining, Kelso, Washington. Look it up. Look up the Castle Rock Raceway. A lot of history there. And dude, thank you. I love you, bro.
Thank you. Love you too, bro. We'll catch you next time.
For sure. Mad Dog out.